Chapter 1 of Book 8 of Physics by Aristotle, translated by Thomas Taylor. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jeffrey Edwards. Chapter 1. Whether, however, was motion once generated, not having a subsistence before, and will it again perish, so that nothing will be moved? Or was it neither generated, nor will be corrupted, but always was, and always will be? And is this present with things as something immortal and unceasing, being as it were a certain life to all things which have a natural subsistence? That motion therefore is, all those assert who say anything concerning nature, because they fabricate the world, and all these speculate concerning generation and corruption, which could not subsist unless motion had a being. Those too who assert that there are infinite worlds, and that some of these worlds are generated and others corrupted, these say that motion always is, for it is necessary that the generations and corruptions of them should be accompanied with motion. But such as assert that there is one world, or that it is not always, these admit concerning motion what is conformable to that opinion. If therefore it be possible that once nothing was moved, it is necessary that this must have happened in a twofold respect. For it must either be as Anaxagoras says, viz., that all things subsisting together, and being at rest in an infinite time, intellect produced and separated motion, or as Empedocles says, that things were alternately moved and at rest, being moved indeed when friendship made one from many things, or strife many from one, and at rest in the intervening times. For he says as follows, quote, as far as one from many was produced, or many to the one their being owed, so far these natures generated were, nor firm eternity in them abides, but so far as for ever they are changed, nor cease at once to exist, for ever they immovable, alternately remain. Close quote. For by the words, so far as they are changed, we must conceive that he means hither and thither. With respect to these things, therefore, we must consider how they subsist. For to perceive the truth respecting them not only contributes to the contemplation concerning nature, but also to the method which pertains to the first principle. But we shall first begin from things which have been before defined by us in the Physics. We say, therefore, that motion is the perfect energy of that which is movable, so far as it is movable. Hence it is necessary that things should be present which are capable of being moved according to each motion. And without the definition of motion, every one must acknowledge it to be necessary that what is able to be moved should be moved according to each motion, as for instance, that what is capable of being changed in quality should be changed in quality, and that what can be locally changed should be borne along. Hence it is necessary that what is capable of being burnt should be prior to that which is burnt, and that which has the power of burning to that which burns. It is necessary, therefore, either that these should have been once generated, there being a time when they were not, or that they should be perpetual. If, however, each of those things which can move and be moved is generated, it is necessary that another mutation and motion should be generated prior to the mutation which is assumed, according to which that is generated which is able to be moved, or to move. But if they always had a prior subsistence, motion not existing, an absurdity will immediately appear to the intelligent. And to those who proceed still further, this will be found to happen by a yet greater necessity. For if, since some things are movable and others motive, there is at any time something which first moves, and something which is first moved, and if at another time there is nothing which moves, but it is at rest, it is necessary that this should have been previously changed. For there was some cause of its rest, since rest is a privation of motion, so that there will be a mutation prior to the first mutation. For some things move according to one motion, but others according to contrary motions. Thus fire heats indeed, but does not refrigerate. But science appears to be one of things contrary. Hence, there also something similar appears, for the cold heats, being turned in a certain respect, and having departed, just as he who possesses scientific knowledge willingly errs, when he improperly uses science. Such things, however, as are able to act and suffer, or to move and to be moved, are not entirely able to effect this. But then only when they subsist in this manner, and are near to each other. Hence, when they approach near, the one moves and the other is moved, and when they are so circumstanced that the one is motive and the other movable. If therefore it was not always moved, it is evident that they were not so affected as that the one could be moved and the other could move. But it was necessary that one of them should be changed. For it is necessary that this should happen in things which have a relative subsistence. Thus, if a thing not having been double is now double, if not both, at least one of them must have been changed. There will therefore be a certain mutation prior to the first, to which may be added, how will there be prior and posterior time not having a subsistence, or how will there be time, motion not existing? But if time is the number of motion, or a certain motion, if time always is, it is necessary that motion also should be perpetual. Concerning time, however, all philosophers except one appear to accord, for they say that it is unbegotten. On this account, Democritus shows that it is impossible for all things to have been generated, because time is unbegotten. But Plato alone generates time, for he says that it was generated together with the universe, and that the universe is generated. If, therefore, it is impossible for time to be, and to be conceived without the now, but the now is a certain middle, possessing at the same time the beginning and the end, the beginning indeed of the future time, and the end of the past, it is necessary that time should always be. For the extremity of the last time which is assumed will be in some now, since nothing can be assumed in time besides the now. So that since the now is both a beginning and an end, it is necessary that time should always be on each side of the now. But if time, it is evident that motion also must necessarily always exist, since time is a certain passion of motion. The same reasoning likewise will prove that motion is incorruptible. For as, if it be admitted that motion was generated, it will happen that there was a certain mutation prior to the first, so here it will happen that there is a mutation posterior to the last. For a thing will not at the same time cease to be movable and to be moved, or to be capable of being burnt and to be burnt. For that may be capable of being burnt, which is not burnt, nor to be motive and to move. But it will be requisite that what is capable of being corrupted should have been corrupted when it is corrupted, and again afterwards that which has the power of corrupting this, for corruption is a certain mutation. If, therefore, these things are impossible, it is evident that motion is perpetual, and not sometimes in existence and sometimes not. For thus to speak rather resembles a fiction than anything else, as also to assert that it is thus naturally adapted, and that it is necessary to consider this as a principle, which Empedocles appears to have asserted, who says that it is necessarily inherent in things that friendship and strife should alternately govern and move, and that they should be at rest in the intermediate time. Perhaps also those who make one principle, as Anaxagoras, would assert the same thing. Nothing, however, among those things which consist from and according to nature is deprived of order, for nature is to all things the cause of order. But the infinite has no ratio to the infinite, and all order is ratio. That anything, however, should have been at rest for an infinite time, and afterwards should have been once moved, and that with respect to this there should be no difference, why it happened now rather than before, and again, that it should have no order, this is no longer the work of nature, for that which subsists by nature either subsists simply, and not differently at different times, as fire is naturally carried upwards, and not at one time and at another not, or it has a ratio which is not simple. Hence it is better to say with Empedocles, and any other who may assert the same thing, that the universe is alternately at rest and in motion. For now a thing of this kind possesses a certain order. He, however, who asserts this ought also to assign the cause of what he says, and not adopt any axiom without a reason, nor expect that it should be granted him, but he should either employ induction or demonstration. For the things which Empedocles supposes are not causes, nor is this the essence of friendship or strife, but it is the province of the former to conjoin, and of the latter to separate. If also it is added that they have dominion alternately, it should be shown in what particulars this happens, as for instance, because there is something which unites men, viz., friendship, and enemies avoid each other. For this is also supposed to be in the universe, because it thus appears to be in certain things. His assertion, likewise, that this happens in equal times requires a certain reason. And in short, to think that this is a sufficient principle, viz., that it either always is, or is always generated, this is not right, to which Democritus refers natural causes, because they were thus, and prior to this generated. But he does not think that the principle of eternity should be investigated, in some things speaking rightly, but because he asserts this of all things, not rightly. For a triangle has always angles equal to 2 right, but at the same time there is a certain other cause of this perpetuity. Of principles, however, there is no other cause, since they are eternal. That there neither was, therefore, nor will be a time when motion was not, or will not be, has been thus far shown. Chapter 2. But it is not difficult to solve the arguments which oppose what we have said. The following considerations may indeed induce some to think that motion once was, when before it had not any subsistence. First, because no mutation is perpetual. For all mutation is naturally adapted to proceed from something into something, so that it is necessary there should be a boundary of all mutation, viz., the contraries in which it is produced, and that nothing should be moved to infinity. Farther still, we see that a thing may be moved which neither is moved, nor possesses in itself any motion, as in a thing inanimate, which, when neither any part nor the whole of it is moved, but is at rest, is sometimes moved. But it is fit that a thing should either always or never be moved, if motion is not generated, when it had not any subsistence before. A thing of this kind, however, is much more evident in animated natures. For sometimes, when there is no motion in us, but we are at rest, at the same time we are sometimes moved, and the principle of motion is sometimes ingenerated in us, from ourselves, though nothing external moves us. For we do not similarly perceive this in things inanimate, but something else which is external always moves them. But we say that an animal moves itself, so that if at any time the whole is at rest, motion can be produced from itself in the immovable, and not externally. If, therefore, this can be effected in an animal, what should hinder but that it may also happen in the universe? For if it takes place in the microcosm, it may likewise in the great world, and if in the world, also in the infinite, if it be possible for the whole infinite to be moved, and be at rest. Of these arguments, however, the first, that there is not always one and the same motion in number which tends to opposites is rightly asserted. For this perhaps is necessary if the motion of one and the same thing cannot always be one and the same in number. I say, for instance, whether there is one and the same sound of one chord, or always another, when the chord subsists and is moved similarly. At the same time, however, in whatever manner this may take place, nothing hinders but that there may be some motion which is one and the same, because it is continued and eternal. This, however, will be more manifest from what will hereafter follow. But there is no absurdity in admitting that a thing may be moved which was not moved before, if that which moves externally is at one time present, and at another not. But how this can take place must be investigated. I say then, it must take place in such a manner that the same thing may be at one time moved, and at another not, by the same thing which has the power of moving. For he who says this doubts nothing else than why some things are not always at rest, and others in motion. But the third argument may especially appear to be dubious, being that which happens in animated natures, as if motion was ingenerated in these, when it was not inherent before. For that which was before at rest afterwards walks, nothing external moving, as it appears. This, however, is false, for we always see something connascent moved in an animal. The animal itself, however, is not the cause of this motion, but perhaps that which surrounds it. But we say that the animal moves itself not according to every motion, but that which is according to place. Nothing, therefore, hinders, but perhaps it is more necessary that many motions should be generated in the body by that which surrounds it, that some of these should be produced by the dianoetic power or appetite, and that this should move the whole animal. Just as it happens in sleep, for then, no sensitive motion being inherent, though a certain motion is inherent, animals are again excited. These things, however, will be manifest from what follows. Chapter 3. But the beginning of the consideration will be that which was the beginning of the doubt already mentioned, viz., why some things are at one time moved, and at another again at rest. It is necessary, therefore, either that all things should always be at rest, or that all things should always be moved, or that some things should be moved, and others be at rest. And again, of these it is necessary either that those things which are moved should always be moved, and those things which are at rest always be at rest, or that all things should be naturally adapted to be similarly moved, and be at rest, or that which remains, and which is the third thing, is necessary, for it happens that some things are always immovable, that some are always moved, and that others participate of both these, which is what we assert to be the case. For this contains a solution of all the doubts, and is the end to us of this treatise. To assert, therefore, that all things are at rest, and to investigate the reason of this, laying aside sense, is a certain infirmity of the dianoetic power. The doubt likewise is about a certain whole, and not about a part. Nor is it only adverse to the natural philosopher, but likewise to all the sciences, as I may say, and to all opinions, because all of them use motion. Again, as the objections about principles, for instance in mathematical discussions, are of no consequence to the mathematician, and in a similar manner also in other things, so neither is the objection about what is now said of any consequence to the natural philosopher. For the hypothesis with him is that nature is a principle of motion. To assert, however, that all things are moved is nearly false indeed, but is less foreign from this method. For in physics it is supposed that nature is a principle as of motion, so likewise of rest. At the same time, however, motion is a natural thing. Some also assert that it is not true that some things are moved and others not, but that all things are moved, and always, but that this is concealed from our sense. To these, however, though they do not define what the motion is of which they speak, or whether they speak of all motions, it is not difficult to reply. For things can neither be increased nor diminished continually, but there is also a medium. This assertion, however, is similar to that in which it is said that stones are worn away by a drop of water and are divided by plants germinating from them. For it does not follow that if a drop of water rubs off, or carries away a certain portion of the stone, it, prior to this, rubbed off or carried away the half of such a portion in half the time. But as in drawing a ship along, in like manner so many drops move so much of the stone. A part of them, however, does not move so much in any time. Hence, that which is taken away is divided indeed into many parts, but no one of them is moved separately, but they are all moved together. It is evident, therefore, that it is not necessary that something should always depart, because the diminution may be divided to infinity, but the whole will some time or other depart. The like also takes place in any kind whatever of alliation. For it does not follow that if that which can be changed in quality may be infinitely divided, on this account alliation also may be divided to infinity, but it is frequently produced collectively, as in the instance of concretion. Farther still, when any one has been ill, it is necessary that there should have been a time when he recovered his health, and that he should not have been changed in the end of the time. It is also necessary that he should have been changed into health, and not into anything else, so that to assert that a thing is continually changed in quality is to doubt about things which are very apparent. For alliation is into that which is contrary, and a stone neither becomes harder nor softer. With respect to lation, it is admirable if a stone is latent which is carried downwards, or which remains on the earth. Again, earth and each of the other elements necessarily remain in their proper places, and are moved from these by violence. If, therefore, some of these are in their proper places, it is necessary that neither should all things be locally moved. That it is impossible, therefore, either that all things should be always moved, or that all things should be always at rest, may be believed from these and other arguments of a similar kind. Neither likewise is it possible that some things should always be at rest, but others always be moved, and that nothing should at one time be at rest, and at another time be moved. But it must be said that this is impossible, as well in things which have been before mentioned, as in these. For we see that the mutations already enumerated take place in the same things. Besides, he who doubts of this opposes the phenomena, for there will neither be increase nor violent motion, unless that which was before at rest is moved contrary to nature. This assertion, therefore, subverts generation and corruption. To be moved, likewise, nearly appears to all men to be nothing else than for something to be generated and corrupted, for it becomes that, or in that, into which it is changed, but not that from which it is changed, or from whence it is corrupted. Hence it is evident that some things are moved, and others are sometimes at rest. But to think fit to assert that all things are sometimes moved and sometimes at rest, this must be conjoined to the reasons above adduced. We must, however, again begin from the things now defined, and from which also we begun before. For either all things are at rest, or all things are moved, or some things are at rest, but others are moved. And if some things are at rest, but others are moved, it is necessary either that all things should sometimes be at rest and sometimes be moved, or that some things should always be at rest and others always be moved, or that some things should sometimes be at rest and sometimes be moved. That it is not possible, therefore, that all things can be at rest has been said before, and we shall also now assert. For if it were in reality so as some say, viz., that being is infinite and immovable, yet this is not apparent to sense, but many beings are moved. If, therefore, there is false opinion, or in short opinion, there is also motion. This is also the case if there is imagination, though at one time it may appear to subsist in this manner, and at another differently. For imagination and opinion appear to be certain motions. To consider, however, about these things, and to investigate a reason in things in which we are better affected than to require a reason, is nothing else than to judge badly of the better and the worse, of that which is credible and of that which is not credible, and of principle and that which is not a principle. In a similar manner, it is impossible that all things should be moved, or that some things should always be moved, and others always be at rest, for one credible argument is sufficient against all these. Since we see some things at one time in motion, and at another at rest. Hence it is evident that it is similarly impossible for all things to be at rest, and for all things to be moved continually, as it is for some things to be always moved, and others to be always at rest. It remains therefore to consider whether all things are of such a kind as to be moved and to be at rest, or whether some things subsist in this manner, but some are always at rest, and some are always moved, for this must be shown by us. Chapter 4. Of things, therefore, which move and are moved, some move and are moved according to accident, but others essentially. According to accident, indeed, such as are inherent in movers, or the things moved, and such as have the relation of a part. But such things move and are moved essentially, as move and are moved, not because they are inherent in that which moves or is moved, nor because a certain part of them moves or is moved. Of those things, however, which are moved essentially, some are moved by themselves, and others by something else, and some by nature, but others by violence, and contrary to nature. For that which is moved by itself is moved by nature, as, for instance, every animal, since an animal is moved by itself. But of such things as contain in themselves the principle of motion, of these we say that they are moved by nature. Hence the whole animal, indeed, itself moves itself by nature, but the body happens to be moved by and contrary to nature, for it is of consequence with what kind of motion it may happen to be moved, and from what element it consists. Of those things also which are moved by something else, some are moved by nature, but others contrary to nature. Contrary to nature, indeed, as terrestrial things when moved upward, and fire downward. Again, the parts of animals are frequently moved contrary to nature on account of positions and modes of motion. And it is especially obvious that a thing which is moved by something, in things which are moved contrary to nature, in consequence of the being moved by something else being evident. But after things which are moved contrary to nature, among such as are moved according to nature, those are more manifest which are moved by themselves, as animals. For this is not immanifest whether they are moved by something, but the obscurity consists in the manner in which it is necessary to distinguish the mover and the thing moved. For it seems that, as in ships and things which have not a natural subsistence, so likewise in animals, that which moves and that which is moved are divided from each other, and that the whole thus moves itself. But it may be especially doubted concerning the remaining member of the last mentioned division. For of things which are moved by another, some we have considered as being moved contrary to nature, but others remain to be opposed because they are moved by nature. And these last are the things which may occasion a doubt by what they are moved, as for instance things light and heavy, for these are moved by violence to opposite places, but to their proper places naturally. The light indeed upward, and the heavy downward. But it is no longer apparent by what they are moved, as it is when they are moved contrary to nature. For it is impossible to say that they are moved by themselves, since this is vital, and the peculiarity of animated natures. They would also be able to stop themselves. I say, for instance, if anything is the cause to itself of walking, it will also be the cause to itself of not walking, so that since it is in the power of fire to tend upward, it is evident that it is also in its power to tend downward. It is also absurd to suppose that they should be moved with one motion only by themselves, if they themselves move themselves. Again, how is it possible that anything continued and connascent can move itself? For so far as it is one and continued, but not by contact, so far it is impassive. So far, however, as they are separated, so far the one is naturally adapted to act, and the other to suffer. Neither, therefore, will any one of these move itself, for they are connascent, nor can this be asserted of anything else which is continued. But it is necessary that in everything that which moves should be divided from that which is moved, as we see in things inanimate, when anything animated moves them. It happens, however, that these are always moved by something, and this will become evident to those who divide causes. What is asserted also may be assumed in motive natures, for some things are motive contrary to their own nature. Thus a lever has not naturally a power of moving a weight, but others are naturally motive. Thus that which is hot in energy is motive of that which is hot in capacity. The like also takes place in other things of a similar kind. Thus, too, that which is movable by nature, which in capacity possesses quality or quantity, or somewhere, when it has such a principle as this in itself, and not according to accident. For the same thing may possess quantity and quality, but the one happens to the other, and is not essentially inherent. Fire, therefore, and earth are moved by something. By violence, indeed, when they are moved contrary to nature, but naturally, when, being in capacity, they are moved to their own energies. Since, however, a subsistence in capacity is multifariously predicated, this is the cause why things of this kind do not appear to be moved by anything, as, for instance, fire upward, and earth downward. But he who learns is in a different way in capacity from him who is scientific, and who now possesses science, and does not theorize. Always, however, when the agent and patient subsist together, that which is in capacity becomes in energy. Thus, he who learns from being in capacity becomes something else in capacity, for he who possesses science and does not theorize is in a certain respect scientific in capacity, but not as he was before he learnt. But when he thus subsists, unless something impedes, he energizes and contemplates, or he would be in contradiction and ignorance. These things also, similarly, take place in natural things. For that which is cold is in capacity hot, but when it is changed, it is now fire and burns, unless something prohibits and impedes. The like also happens about the heavy and the light, for that which is light becomes so from the heavy, as for instance air from water, for it was first this in capacity, and now is light, and immediately energizes unless something impedes. But the energy of a light thing is to be somewhere, and to be in the upper region, but it is impeded when it is in a contrary place. This likewise similarly happens in quantity and quality. This also may be investigated why things light and heavy are moved to their proper places. The cause of this, however, is that they are naturally somewhere, and this is the very being of what is light and heavy. The essence of the former being defined by existing in the upper, and of the latter by existing in the downward region. But things are light and heavy in capacity, multifariously, as we have already observed. For when a thing is water, it is in a certain respect light in capacity, and when it is air, it is still in capacity, because it may happen that, being impeded, it is not in the upward region. But if that which impedes is taken away, then it energizes and always tends upward. In like manner, that which possesses quality changes into a subsistence in energy, For he who possesses science immediately theorizes unless something impedes, and that which possesses quantity is extended unless something prevents. But he who removes that which supports and impedes, in a certain respect moves, and in a certain respect does not, as is the case with him who withdraws a pillar or takes away a stone from a bladder in water. For he moves accidentally, just as a ball, when rebounding, is not moved by the wall, but by him who threw it. It is evident, therefore, that no one of these things moves itself, but possesses the principle of motion, not indeed of moving or acting, but of suffering. But if all movable natures are either moved by nature or contrary to nature, and by violence, and if all things which are moved by violence and contrary to nature are moved by something and by another, and again, if those things which are moved by nature, as well those which are moved by themselves, as those not moved by themselves, as things heavy and light, are moved by something, for they are either moved by that which generates and makes the light and heavy, or by that which removes things that impede and prevent. If this be the case, whatever is moved by something. End of chapter 4 of book 8. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards.